over 100 years ago. And like so many men and women, hundreds of thousands of their generation, they made the difficult and courageous decision to leave in search of a better life. They undertook their journey in hope and often in hardship. And their story is part of the great Irish narrative, a story of dispersal, of resilience, and ultimately of remarkable achievement across the world. Tomorrow, the Prime Minister will travel to Ahagour, Mayo, to the place where two of his grandparents were born. It is a turn of events that I think would make them enormously proud. Proud that their sacrifices and hardships paved the way for his remarkable accomplishments and achievements. Proud that having achieved high office, he has never once forgotten where he comes from. The ties between Ireland and Canada are not just diplomatic or economic. They are not something abstract or distant. They are human ties, rooted in family connections, in shared experience, and in lived history. I know I speak for the people of Mayo, and indeed for the Irish people more broadly, when I say that we are deeply honoured to welcome him back, and I know this homecoming will be received with great warmth and enormous affection. The relationship between Ireland and Canada rests on extraordinarily deep foundations. More than 4.4 million Canadians claim Irish heritage. Canada provided a home for those seeking refuge during the famine. It offered opportunity to our people while we were finding our feet as a new nation. It stood with us as we worked to bring peace to this island, including in sending us their finest to help our efforts, like General John de Chastelain. Prime Minister Carney's visit comes at a moment of considerable significance, not only for our bilateral relationship, but for the wider international environment. In a world of increasing uncertainty, Prime Minister Carney has spoken with great clarity and conviction about Canada's desire to deepen its engagement with Europe. Ireland warmly and unreservedly welcomes that ambition, and we will do what we can to strengthen relations between the European Union and Canada during our forthcoming presidency. Prime Minister Carney's visit is not just about the past, it's very much about the future, and in a very concrete way. Today we agreed a new bilateral cooperation partnership between Ireland and Canada, under which we will work together on some of the greatest challenges facing the world, from AI and life science to climate action and trade. It is a structured, practical roadmap for a deeper partnership, one that will bring benefits to people in both of our countries. I was also pleased to be able to tell the Prime Minister that the Oireachtas has passed the legislation necessary for Ireland to ratify CETA, the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement between the European Union and Canada. Once signed by the President, we will move forward to ratify. Finally, we are working together on Canada-Ireland 180, a major cultural and commemorative programme to be held next year, marking 180 years of the relationship between our two peoples. It is entirely right that we take the time to honour the legacy of all those who built that relationship and to reflect on what their courage and sacrifice made possible. In closing, I want to say, Mark, that our meeting today has confirmed my genuine confidence and optimism about the trajectory of the Ireland-Canada relationship. We are working together and we are stronger together. Finally, Mark, once again, you are most warmly welcome to Ireland, the home of your grandparents, a place that I know is deeply special to you and a place where you will always, always be among friends.
Thank you. Thank you. Brilliant. Thank you. I would like to thank the Taoiseach for the gracious hospitality, for the partnership in all that Canada and Ireland are building together. And dear Michael, thank you for welcoming me back home. It is good to be home. It is a true pleasure to return to Dublin and an honour to be the first Canadian Prime Minister in a decade to be making an official visit here. I look forward to visiting Trinity College later this afternoon, one of the world's leading universities across the humanities, literature, arts, sciences. And of course, I'm looking forward to visiting County Mayo tomorrow, Agagaur, the place that made my family. Today, though, this afternoon, is about work, but it's good work. It's positive work. It's about strengthening a relationship that is already flourishing. Flourishing through people, 4.5 million Canadians of Irish ancestry, 200,000 Canadians who travel here every year. It's a relationship that's flourishing through commerce, with more Canadian businesses such as Shopify, press reader Clio choosing Ireland as the base for their European operation. Flourishing through the tens of thousands of workers that Canadians and Irish companies are employing in each other's companies. Flourishing through investment from our major pension plans. Flourishing through trade, which has already increased 150% over the past decade, far outpacing the serious increase that's happened as well between Canada and the European Union. And Taoiseach, I would just like to underscore how pleased we are that you're moving forward with the full ratification of CETA, with the amendments to the Arbitration Act now passed through Oireachtas. And I know that was important work, and we're very grateful that that has been accomplished. Now, all of that said, with all of that flourishing and movement, you might suggest maybe we should just leave well enough alone, keep it going. But there's much more that we can do together. An analysis led by the Government of Ireland suggests that across 13 sectors, from finance to air transport, that through deeper cooperation we can add an additional $2 billion a year in bilateral trade. More opportunity, more prosperity, more resilience in that uncertain world. And so to help deliver on that today, we're advancing our bilateral relationship across key sectors. We're harnessing complementary strengths to reinforce our sovereignty and deliver benefits for our people, from artificial intelligence to pharma to biotech and food security. You know, we have complementary strategies in artificial intelligence. The Digital Ireland strategy and Canada's AI for All strategies, ways to harness the AI revolution, but to put people at the center of that transformation. And the delivery in that partnership is almost immediate. In fact, some of it's already begun. OpenText, Canadian company, has announced yesterday their investment of more than $100 million in Cork to establish their European hub for AI in partnership with Ireland's IDA. In pharma and biotechnology, Canada and Ireland will cooperate and expand our cooperation in life sciences, including skills development for students and more resources for our researchers. Our leading training hubs will work together to ensure our workers have the right tools, technologies, and expertise they need. We'll also Canada will work to open a regenerative medicine hub right here in Ireland and partnering with the expertise here. And we'll deepen coordination between our governments in building pharma supply chains to improve access for our citizens of the medicines that they need. On food security, it's the third pillar that the Taoiseach and I were determined to have in. We've tasked our officials with finding new ways to build shared resilience, better protecting families from external shocks, such as the terrible disruptions we've seen from the conflicts in Ukraine and the Middle East. We want to put citizens back in control and leverage our strengths there. Now, in parallel to our deepening relationship bilaterally, Canada is also working to deepen our partnership with the European Union, particularly during Ireland's upcoming presidency of the Council of the EU. We fully support your priorities for your presidency. First, increasing competitiveness, simplifying processes, deepening investment, diversifying trade, focus on strategic sectors, and resilience. Bolstering security. with continued support of the EU for Ukraine, strengthening the defense and security industrial base, and finally, and foundationally, upholding the values of the rule of law and democracy, indispensable to the foundation of the EU, but also indispensable, foundational to our partnership between Canada and Ireland. Le nouvel ordre mondial se construira à partir de l'Europe. Le Canada est le plus européen des pays non européens et nous sommes en train de transformer notre coopération avec l'Union européenne. En juin dernier, nous avons conclu un nouveau partenariat qui a renforcé notre coopération sur le plan du climat, des technologies et du commerce. En février, le Canada est devenu le premier membre non européen du mécanisme SAFE, l'initiative en matière d'approvisionnement de défense. Nous avons déjà établi plus de 50 partenariats dans le secteur des minéraux critiques dans plus de 10 pays en Europe. Dans un monde plus dangereux et divisé, le Canada choisit de bâtir et de travailler en partenariat avec l'Europe. Finally, as the Taoiseach mentioned, next year marks 180 years since the first wave of Irish immigration to Canada, a wave that was triggered by the famine which devastated this country and whose memory instills the values of compassion and solidarity with the most vulnerable in our society, and Irish leadership, the most vulnerable around the world. These are values that we are reaffirming. These are also values in a history we're celebrating, and we will celebrate the 180th anniversary. Taoiseach, thank you again for your hospitality, for your leadership, your friendship. We look forward to your questions. Thank you. Merci.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
We have some microphones, and we're going to ask the question. The first question is going to go to David Cochran from CBC.
Hello, Prime Minister. Hello, Taoiseach. I have a question about the conflict in Iran. In the past hour and a bit, Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif of Pakistan has posted on social media that he thinks a peace deal could be finalized in the next 24 hours. We've been close before, and it's not gone well. So I'm wondering that, should this not come to pass, how much longer do you think economies can persist with before their fiscal capacity and oil reserves get to a stretching point where it could unleash a bigger economic crisis? If there is an agreement, is any Iranian control over the Strait of Hormuz or a toll acceptable? And does it just need to be Iran and the United States, or do Lebanon and Israel need to be part of this? So, Taoiseach, if you want to answer that in English and in French, that would be amazing. But Prime Minister Carney,
it certainly would.
That be mandatory. But Prime Minister Carney, please, in both official languages.
Okay, so that was a 7-part question you fit in there, David. First, I'll say that Canada is encouraged by recent developments with respect to the possibility of a more durable ceasing of hostilities and potential pathway. But we will, it's not concluded until it's concluded and formalized. That's the first observation I'll make. The second is that there will be an opportunity. I think the G7 is timely, and not least because it is an expanded group at the G7 under the French presidency, including a number of Gulf countries that will be there, as well as Egypt. And timely in the sense of, if there is progress, more can be done to reinforce that progress and move forward. Canada will look absolutely to play our role there. In terms of what's required, yes, a broader cessation of hostilities, including in Lebanon, has been our position from the start. We see the links between the two. Complex but necessary, important. Last point. How long can countries withstand is, I think, the way you framed. Some not long. Countries like Ireland and Canada countries of the European Union have put in place a series of measures to be more resilient and robust. We are stronger when we're working together, which is part of the reason for these partnerships, and how we think about being more resilient to future shocks from wherever they come and why we deepen. And at the same time, and I'll speak for Canada, of course, what we have done, as has been done here, but specifically in Canada, is recognize the pressure that Canadian families are under because of this conflict and the immediate hit in energy prices, and reinforce through both temporary suspension of excise taxes and the groceries and essentials benefits to support the most vulnerable Canadians, which in the case of the essentials benefit is 12 million Canadians. Plus rapidement, si je peux en français, Taoiseach, en ce qui concerne les développements au Moyen-Orient, si nous sommes encouragés par le développement, mais ce n'est pas fini. C'est le moment. Il faut avoir un accord qui est signé par les États-Unis, l'Iran, les autres pays, qui est acceptable des autres pays dans la région. Les signes sont encourageants à ce moment-ci. Premier point. Deuxièmement, le G7, il y aura probablement une occasion au G7 de renforcer le progrès. En ce qui concerne la résilience des pays, l'Irlande et le Canada, l'Union européenne, nous sommes plus forts ensemble et en même temps, il faut donner un coup de pouce des familles et un pont à un meilleur avenir. Et on a fait avec les réductions des impôts sur les carburants et les bénéfices des épiceries essentielles. D'accord.
Could I say that I sincerely hope that a cessation and a peace deal is imminent. Dialogue, we've always stressed the importance of dialogue in ending conflict in the Middle East. And may I say, first and foremost, it's about the people in the Middle East. It's ordinary families, ordinary children who are experiencing horrific violence and carnage for far too long now in the Middle East. So first and foremost, to bring back a bit of civility and decency to the area and to make sure that people can live their lives again. Economies are finding it difficult to sustain. At a global level, it'll be the weaker economies. Many of the African nations will be under pressure in terms of food security if we do not get this resolved. Similar to Canada, we've introduced our package of measures to endeavour to alleviate pressures on key sectors in our economy, particularly in transport and agriculture, but also more generally for the population as best we can. Governments can never, ever alleviate the full impact of the inflationary pressures that have arisen because of the energy security issue arising out of the conflict. It's extremely important that Lebanon is included in the peace process. Lebanese sovereignty is absolutely essential. President Aoun is doing everything he possibly can to bring back Lebanon and to try and create a future for Lebanon. Many countries, we have peacekeepers in Lebanon with United Nations, with UNIFIL. We're very conscious of the enormous challenges facing Lebanon, and war and conflict must end. May I say more generally, and I don't want to be too naive here, but the world needs to stand back, perhaps use this opportunity if there's a successful conclusion to these talks, to look at conflict more generally in the world, because many of the challenges and problems we are facing arise because of terrible wars and conflict in Ukraine, in the Middle East, in Sudan, for example. And it would be a huge respite to the world if we could take this opportunity to move in a non-conflictual way and endeavour to get a cessation of violence and killing across the globe. I think that would release energy societally and economically that would be very difficult to hold back if we could achieve something like that. So this is a moment in time, perhaps, and I know the G7 is meeting next week, and perhaps there are opportunities here to be grasped.
Yes.
Merci beaucoup, David.
Next question out from Micheál Martin from RT.
Prime Minister, when it comes to negotiating and working with difficult political friends and foes, how would you say your Irish heritage has influenced your approach to such a task, namely working with the US at present? And Taoiseach, is there an exact timeline now around CETA? Could it be passed before the summer? And until Monina Gut go glap for le CETA Ribbon Saura?
Well, maybe I'll recall Yeats and the indomitable Irishry. I think that's probably drawing on that strength and that heritage is necessary. Important to draw on some history as well and perspective, shared history with those you're negotiating with. I think you're referring to the United States, and of course we have a long shared and largely positive history between our nations. That history is, or that relationship is most productive when sovereignty is respected on both sides, and recognition, and this is a challenge for all nations, and Europe has helped to solve it amongst themselves, is a blend of sovereignty and cooperation and integration. And the United States is in the process of rebalancing that. We understand that, and we're responding to that. So, yeah, be indomitable. That's my observation.
Could I say, Michael, that CETA has been passed through the Oireachtas, so essentially it's gone through the most significant part of its journey through the Arbitration Act, and I want to pay tribute to Mrs. McEntee and Mr. Thomas Byrne, European Minister, who steered this through both the Dáil and the Seanad. It now awaits the President's signature, but this is our experience of CETA since it's been provisionally operationalised has been phenomenal in terms of a fourfold increase in exports and generally good complementarity in terms of both imports and exports from and to Canada. And in many ways, it's a very good illustration of how good structured trade deals between Europe and other parts of the world, and particularly Canada, can yield very good results all around. And in a world that in some parts is going protectionist, the experience of CETA so far illustrates the benefits of open and free and structured and fair trade. I think we look forward to that Canadian-European Union relationship deepening even further in the months ahead, and that's something we hope to explore during our presidency. So, Tom Moninach Gamamidinan Conra Sita Glacha Saravad Ton Quidus Mot and Ibridentenish, August Tasha Turestal Treat and Doyle, August on Shanid, August Lerinche on Conra Kecho Rahul, it's a tall Conrad and Taisha, Conrad Tradala, Extav Vadni Smo Dini, August Kolachti Inish, Eg Dailoil, the Kolachti Canada, August Morangene, Kolachti of Canada, Eg Stockaneer and August Mer Chulamer Madden, Inishtiak on a vor on open text, August is came on a voration.
Next up is Catherine Martin from CP.
Hi, thank you both for taking our questions today. And again, Prime Minister Carney, I would love your response in French as well, please. Over recent months, there has been some controversy over Irish alumina exports reportedly fueling Russia's war on Ukraine, and I recognize that an investigation is ongoing. Given your commitments to supporting Ukraine, could you please share if this issue was raised during your conversation today, or during your visit, and if what came out of those discussions, if so? Thank you.
Tout d'abord, en français, je voudrais saluer le leadership de l'Irlande et l'Union européenne par rapport à l'Ukraine. Ce sont des principes et des actions fondamentales afin de régler cette situation, cette guerre tragique. Et je voudrais observer qu'une des trois piliers de la présidence d'Irlande, de l'Union européenne et de la sécurité, surtout pour l'Ukraine. Alors, en ce qui concerne cette situation spécifique, oui, il y a une investigation qui est en train. Alors, dans ce contexte, on va avoir une discussion. Il y a une réunion après cette conférence de presse, mais j'ai beaucoup de confiance dans le processus qui existe maintenant. In English, just on the specifics of the investigation you referenced, that is underway. I have every confidence in that. We'll have a quick exchange on it when we have our more detailed working lunch. But I want to underscore the broader point, which is that Ireland and the European Union have been at the forefront of supporting Ukraine in Russia's unjustified, aggressive war. That will continue through Ireland's presidency, and of the three pillars of the presidency, the security pillar, the first element of that, at least in my reading and in our conversations, has been support for Ukraine. And that is an element of, and I'll finish on this, because I think it's more, if I may, and the Taoiseach can reinforce, it's more than just security. It is an issue of values, rule of law, human rights, territorial integrity and dignity, and a position that was just articulated with respect to conflict. So Canada very much supports that. We're doing our own elements, as you know, but we are grateful for the unwavering support of Ireland and the European Union of Ukraine.
Yeah, may I say at the outset that Ireland is unreservedly, from the outset, strongly supportive of Ukraine, both its sovereignty, and we have condemned, obviously, the Russian invasion, but more importantly, we have supported every single European Union measure in relation to the war in Ukraine, and we've supported every sanctions package that the EU Commission has brought to the table, as well as other measures, and we've been one of the strongest early supporters of Ukrainian accession to the European Union, and we'll continue with that. And of course, we've been members of the Coalition of the Willing with Canada in terms of its work, and particularly if there was ever a ceasefire or a monitoring of such a ceasefire or any peacekeeping role, Ireland has indicated very early on that we would be willing to play that role too. But in terms of Anish, again, it's the European Union brings the sanctions package. The European Union has decided up to now not to sanction alumina. We are doing an investigation into recent reports in terms of material from Anish going directly to Russia. We don't want to have any role or be party to any support to Russia's war machine. There were issues early on in terms of alumina being critical as part of the European supply chain. And these are factors that are always taken into account, not just in respect of ourselves, but other member states in terms of specific issues. And so one always endeavours to get a balanced outcome to various sanctions packages. But we will engage with the European Commission on this following our investigation, and we'll deal with that then.
Next is Gavin Riley from Guardian Media.
Prime Minister Carney. Earlier on in the year, during your speech at Davos, you spoke about middle powers and small nations banding together to stand up against global superpowers. I suppose, could you just say whether or not you were explicitly referring to Ireland in that speech, and maybe if you could also expand on whether or not you think Ireland could be part of such a group going forward. And then a second question that I'd like to get the Taoiseach's response on as well. Do either of you believe that the Trump administration can realistically be a reliable trading partner ever again?
So, yes, I would include Ireland and did include Ireland in my mind, at least, in terms of those middle powers. And it's no accident that prior to the speech and then intensifying subsequently to the speech, that we have worked towards deepening the bilateral relationship. And I can make it tangible in a few ways. First is that one of the things that broader middle powers can do is, for issues about which we care deeply and can influence, we band together and we work to help. The Taoiseach just referenced Coalition of the Willing for Ukraine. We've been there. That's not NATO. It's not the G whatever that's coming together. It is a group of like-minded countries that are committed to supporting Ukraine, particularly when there is a cessation of hostilities, the regeneration, and providing security guarantees for those of us who would contribute to this security guarantee element, so that we don't have a repeat of what happened with the war of 2014 becoming the war of 2020 and on. So that's the first element. The second element, actually you see some of this coming out today, which is that there are various areas where integration, global integration, of which Ireland and Canada are both strong supporters and have been great beneficiaries of, but there's certain areas where in global integration that can be used as leverage against you, particularly if you have only one supplier or only one option. So when we look at emerging technologies where we have complementary strengths, actually having more than one option, having a web of connections, the way we talk about it, is to great advantage. And so a tangible example of that is in AI and cloud infrastructure. So big investment today. We're not saying that Canada and Ireland will only partner with each other in AI, of course not that, but it's part of a broadening of the relationship for both of us, and that puts us in a stronger position if for whatever reason, because of availability of models, because of availability of certain technologies, because of some broader dispute, that we're not beholden to just one counterparty. It's just sensible things to do, but we're much more deliberate about it. And to finish my answer, part of the first element, with whom do we tend to band together on geopolitical issues, issues of values, issues of the global development, climate change, and others? Well, those like-minded countries and organizations are more likely to be the reliable partners in these strategic areas, if I can put it that way. So that is a very oblique answer to your last part of your question.
Could I say at the outset that I would endorse what Prime Minister Carney has said, and I think that speech at Davos was a very important speech because I think it brought clarity, but also suggested a way forward in terms of like-minded states and governments. And I'm always of the view that greater collaboration internationally will yield greater results. One of the best examples in recent times has been discovering the vaccine for COVID-19. That was actually an extraordinary moment of international collaboration and a race against time to get an effective vaccine. Now, if we deployed national borders, we would never have achieved that, and scientists got together across the globe. And it's interesting, even now when we talk to Canadian companies on AI and so on, by talking to each other, we're all adding something additional to the table and adding value, and we both win, and the world does better, in my view, as a general rule. In terms of the United States and President Trump's views and perspectives, I mean, President Trump is democratically elected as President of the United States, and I'll always respect that. And throughout our political lives, there will be toing and froing and different perspectives. That is democracy in many respects. The challenge is to navigate that, to engage with that. And in my sense, we must always, all of us, understand the limits of power too and the limits of governments in the general overall scheme of things. What do I mean by that? I mean, if you look at the relationships between Europe and the US, they're very deep, they're very substantial, both at economic, political, and people-to-people level. And so I think we need to mind those relationships. I would argue that the relationship is so strong that we need to continue working on that relationship, and my visit to the White House in March was part of that. And we had a good engagement there, but also we had a very good engagement with the House, with congressmen and women and senators. So it's a multi-layered relationship, and it's one that we have to continue to work at and highlight the pluses, the advantages, and the positives in that relationship, and accepting that people will have different political platforms, different political orientation in terms of economics or in terms of politics more generally. And once there's mutual respect of both, then I think we have the capacity to navigate such scenarios that evolve. And that would be my view on that. I mean, I'm not one for a sort of short-term reactionary response to any given administration's position. I tend to take the long view, that there are some enduring aspects to the relationship that will simply endure if we continue to work on it and continue to mind it.
Okay. And last but not least, Brian Pratt from Bloomberg.
Mr. Carney, and I'll ask you again to answer in English and French, please. You've been asked a few times about negotiating with the Trump administration. I want to get a bit more specific about where the state of play is right now in trade talks with the U.S. and Mexico. It seems we're in a situation for the foreseeable future where these are bilateral discussions that may produce bilateral agreements. Of course, it's only the U.S. and Mexico that are having, for now, these scheduled, intensive rounds of negotiations. And you said that's because they have a lot more to work through, which makes sense, but can you speak to the risk that the U.S. and Mexico reach a bilateral deal that sets a precedent that boxes Canada in? I'm thinking particularly on autos and steel. How are you approaching this? Do Canada and Mexico share red lines in their negotiations with the Trump administration on these tariffs?
Premièrement, en ce qui concerne les relations entre le Canada et le Mexique, on a des discussions jour par jour, intensives, constructives. Et oui, on partage des renseignements, des perspectives, des objectifs, premièrement. Deuxièmement, dans le sens, il y a, oui, des négociations États-Unis, le Mexique, États-Unis, le Canada, mais dans un contexte quand tout le monde veut préserver l'ACM, okay? Une fondation. Parce que ce n'est pas possible d'avoir une négociation qui changeait fondamentalement l'ACM sans l'approbation du Congrès aux États-Unis, ou dans un sens, si y a un changement fondamental de l'ACM, il faut avoir la ratification du Parlement au Canada. Okay? Alors, et en ce qui concerne la possibilité, il y a des discussions sont plus sur des enjeux techniques, dans un sens, c'est plus que technique, mais ce n'est pas les 232. OK? Ce n'est pas les grands enjeux à ce moment-ci. Alors, mais le Canada et les États-Unis, au niveau du ministre Leblanc et son homologue, M. Greer, il y a des discussions constructives sur des aspects techniques. Il y avait une réunion la semaine passée et il y aura une autre réunion dans quelques jours au G7. Et le Canada s'attend à ce qu'il y avait de progrès et qu'il y ait de progrès dans les discussions. So in English, the first is just to underscore that with respect to the Canadian-Mexican relationship, yes, we talk regularly, we share perspectives, information, we share objectives. We're both committed as much as possible in the new trading environment to an integrated North American market. First point. Second, within the context of these bilateral discussions, I think what we have to remember is that they're in the context of maintaining the foundation of CUSMA, because if that is fundamentally changed, then that would have to be approved by the relevant legislatures, Congress in the case of the U.S., Parliament in the case of Canada. It is not, the U.S. has been clear that they do not want to go to Congress to change the fundamental architecture. So there's elements of that. You see much of that in revealed preference, if you will. The 85% of our trade, as you know, is tariff-free. It operates under the rules of CUSMA as they exist. They are effectively a series of issues on the bilateral basis. They differ between Canada and Mexico. There's some overlap, but they're largely technical, different. And it does make sense to have those processes moving forward. Last thing, in terms of Canada's discussions on these, as you know, Minister Leblanc had a meeting with his counterpart, Ambassador Greer, one of his counterparts, Ambassador Greer, last week, made progress on a number of these issues. We expect to make more progress when they meet next week at the G7. Lots to do, but progress being made.
Well, it is very, very quick. All right, that was week, a report into the abuses of paedophile Bill Keneally found a dereliction of duty on behalf of the Gardaí. It's already been signalled that his victims will receive an apology from the government, but survivors have criticised Justice Minister Jim O'Callaghan for not meeting with them before the report was published, and also more broadly criticised your party Fianna Fáil. They say relatives of Keneally, who were elected representatives in your party, had information that, if properly acted upon, could have stopped his abuse, spared victims and brought him to justice earlier. Do you accept that there was a failure in your party, and will it be apologising?
Well, first of all, I think the actions of Bill Keneally were reprehensible and horrific, and I would have called nearly a decade ago for a commission of investigation into the handling of that. And I've read the report preliminary, and it's very clear that the central conclusion of the commission of investigation is that there was a failure on behalf of An Garda Síochána at the time in 1987 to deal adequately and properly with the presentation of issues and allegations in respect of Bill Keneally, and also Bill Keneally himself coming to the Garda station and from what reading the report, being tantamount to admitting his culpability. The report doesn't implicate the Fianna Fáil party at all as an organisation, and in fact makes the point that the Fianna Fáil party was not advised, even locally or in any shape or form, by any individual. The two former public representatives involved did wrong in the manner in which they addressed the issue, no question about that. And the government will, we're organising time in the Dáil to debate this comprehensively, and because of the central conclusion of the Commission of Investigation to the effect that state agencies effectively failed the victims in terms of not dealing with this robustly and properly at the time, government will be considering an apology and any further actions. Now, my understanding is the report would have been circulated, or certainly drafts of the report would have been circulated earlier, and the Minister will be meeting with the victims. And what's also clear from the report, that the report is clear there's no evidence whatsoever of any conspiracy or any attempt of a cover-up, and that's the evidence. We must allow the report speak for itself, and that's the position. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.